Hello friends. About 99% of friends who watch my videos are not subscribed, and I would be very happy if you did. Also, don't forget to press the like button and leave your comments. Your interaction makes the content reach everyone and helps the channel grow. Also, let me know in the comments from which country you are watching the video. I swear to God, if you've ever thought the open road was peaceful, you've never driven through the back highways of Arizona at 3 in the morning with a full load and a broken CB radio. That night started like any other haul. Just me, the eye, hum of my Peterbilt, and the black ribbon of asphalt stretching on forever. But somewhere past mile marker 212, the temperature dropped so fast the windshield fogged up like I'd driven straight into a freezer. I turned the defroster up, muttering about desert cold fronts when my headlights picked up something lying across the road. At first I thought it was a blown-out tire, but as I slowed down, my stomach clenched. It wasn't a tire. It was a person, or at least it looked like one. Pale as chalk, arms and legs splayed out like a rag doll, wearing clothes that didn't fit this century. I leaned on the horn, hard, no movement. So against every instinct in my body, I put the truck in park, grabbed my flashlight, and stepped out. The second my boots hit the gravel, the air went dead still. No wind, no insects, not even the usual hum from the power lines. Just silence so thick I could hear my own heartbeat banging in my ears. I edged closer to the body, light shaking in my hand, every step crunching louder than it should. The beam hit her face, and my blood turned to ice. Her eyes were wide open, staring up at the sky, but they were pure black. Not just the pupils, every inch of the eyeball. And her mouth was stretched into this impossible grin, like something you'd see in one of those cursed internet photos. I took a step back, then two, ready to sprint back to the cab, when she sat up. No warning, no twitch, just bam, bolt upright like a puppet yanked by invisible strings. "You're late," she said, voice low and gurgling, like water was stuck in her throat. That was all I needed. I turned and booked it back to the truck, practically diving into the cab, slammed the door, locked it, and fired up the engine. Tires spun as I peeled out, not looking back even once, not even when I heard scratching at the back of the trailer, like fingernails on aluminum. I didn't stop until I hit the next truck stop 50 miles down, and even then I barely made it inside, hands shaking so bad I spilled half my coffee. I tried to tell myself it was a hallucination from sleep deprivation, or maybe just some messed up prank, but I knew better. You see, when I got out to check the back of the truck, there were 3 long, deep gouges down the rear doors, like something had been trying to get in, something with claws. So there I was, standing behind my rig in the early morning haze, sun barely creeping over the horizon, staring at these claw marks like they were carved straight out of a nightmare. They weren't random scratches, no. They were deliberate, deep, and symmetrical. 3 parallel gashes, evenly spaced, slicing through the thick steel like it was butter. I ran my hand over them, and the edges were still sharp, like whatever. Madam had done it not long before I stopped. I checked the security seal on the trailer latch, still intact. No signs of forced entry. Nothing inside had been touched. But that didn't matter. Something, or someone, had followed me. I kept telling myself I was just tired, that maybe it had been an animal I clipped on the road and dragged along without realizing it. But nothing added up. The scratches were too clean, too perfect. And I couldn't shake the image of that woman's black eyes or the way she sat up like a corpse in a horror movie. I tried to sleep in the back of the cab for a couple hours, but every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face. I gave up around 8, grabbed another cup of sludge coffee from the truck stop diner, and hit the road again, hoping daylight would shake the feeling off me. It didn't. About 10 miles in, I noticed something strange in my mirrors. At first, it looked like heat waves rippling behind the trailer. But then the shimmer took shape. It was subtle, like watching something invisible try to hold its form. A blur, like a person made of smoke, crouched low and clinging to the undercarriage of the trailer. My breath caught in my throat. I blinked, adjusted the mirror, but it was still there, clinging like it didn't care I could see it now. My hands clenched the wheel. I thought about pulling over, checking the back, but part of me knew I didn't want to see whatever the hell that was up close. So I did what any sane trucker would do. I floored it. Speed limit be damned, I pushed. Heard a 75, 80, 85 trailer bucking a little from the wind drag, trying to shake that thing loose. It held on. I could see it rippling harder now, like it was digging in. And then, as sudden as it came, it vanished. Not like it jumped off or blew away. 1 second it was there, and the next it was gone. I kept driving, adrenaline still pumping, eyes scanning the road and mirrors like a madman. Nothing for miles, not a soul. But when I stopped for fuel around noon, I noticed something that damn near made me pass out. On the passenger side window, just above where a head might rest, were 3 black, greasy fingerprints, smudged, long, unnatural, like they'd been pressed from the inside. I just stood there staring at those prints, heart thumping like a jackhammer in my chest, my brain trying to catch up with what my eyes were seeing. They were too long to be human. Each finger stretched, just a bit too far, bent at the wrong angle, like someone had pushed their hand against the glass without understanding how hands were supposed to work. And they were on the inside. I didn't let anyone in. No one had been in the cab with me. I reached out, trembling, and touched the smudges. The residue was slick, almost oily, and cold. Ice cold. Like it had come from something that didn't belong in this world. I wiped the glass clean with a towel, then double-checked the locks, even though I always keep them down tight when I'm hauling. Everything was secure, nothing stolen, nothing out of place, except those damn prints. I got back on the road and tried to keep my mind occupied. Turned up the radio, scanned through static until I found a preacher shouting about the end times and demons walking among us. Normally I'd laugh it off, but right then, his voice felt more like a warning than a sermon. A few hours later, somewhere just outside of New Mexico, I picked up a CB signal. Now this was weird, because my CB had been busted since I left Flagstaff. Hadn't chirped once since the trip started. But there it was, static at first. Then a voice, soft and slow, like someone whispering through a tunnel. "You can't outrun her," it said. I froze, looked at the radio like it had just grown fangs. The voice came again, clearer this time. "She's already inside." I slammed the volume down and unplugged the damn thing. My mouth went dry. I checked the passenger seat. Empty. I looked into the sleeper. Nothing. But the air smelled wrong. Not smoke, not mold. It was like old flowers, the kind you'd find in a funeral home. I cracked the window and tried to calm down. But then, from the sleeper, I heard breathing. Slow, steady, and not mine. I wasn't even moving. I held my breath. The sound kept going. In and out. In and out. Like something was back there, waiting, watching. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles went white. I didn't dare look behind me. Not then. I just kept driving, eyes locked on the road, praying for a town, a light, anything human. And when I finally saw a sign for a way station up ahead, I pulled in without hesitation. Anything to be around people. Anything to break the silence in that cab. But when I got out and looked into the sleeper through the side window, the blanket had been pulled down. And on the pillow, a long black hair that wasn't mine. Now let me tell you something. I've been driving this rig for over 15 years. I've hauled everything from sheet metal to livestock, crossed the country more times than I can count, slept in every truck stop between Maine and California. I've seen weird things, heard even weirder. But nothing, and I mean nothing, ever, made me feel true bone-deep fear like that single strand of hair. It was thick, black and glossy, lying across my white pillow like a spider waiting to be noticed. I don't have black hair. Never have. and I sure as hell hadn't let anyone in my cab. My hands were shaking as I reached in and plucked it off the pillow. I half expected it to slither away or burn my fingers, but it was just hair, cold, lifeless, but real. Still, I knew it didn't belong. Something had been in there with me, or maybe still was. I didn't sleep that night. Hell, I didn't even stay in the cab. I locked her up and slept on a bench inside the way station's tiny diner with one eye open and a coffee clutched in both hands. The lady behind the counter, Betty, I think her name was, noticed how rough I looked and asked if I was okay. I started to tell her, just to get it off my chest, but the second I mentioned the black-eyed woman, her whole demeanor changed. She went pale, lips tightening. Then she leaned in real close and said, "You saw her on 212, didn't you?" I blinked, stunned. "You know about that stretch?" I asked. Betty nodded slowly. "Everyone local knows to avoid that road after midnight. Things happen out there. People vanish. Trucks break down and are found days later with no one inside. But sometimes we hear things over the CB, things that sound like drivers begging for help, but no one ever finds them." Her eyes were serious. "You didn't stop, did you?" I didn't know what to say. I thought she was hurt. Betty sucked in a breath and crossed herself. "She's not human. Hasn't been for years. They say she was a hitchhiker who died out there decades ago, killed by a long-haul driver who fell asleep at the wheel. Now she's stuck, angry, latches onto any rig that slows down, and once she's on board, she doesn't let go easy." I felt like the diner had dropped 10 degrees. "How do I get rid of her?" I asked. Betty just looked at me with this hollow stare and said, "You don't." Then she walked away. I left that place an hour later, nerves frayed, eyes bloodshot. As I climbed back into the cab, I noticed something else. My glove box was open. I hadn't touched it since Flagstaff, and inside, right on top of my registration papers, was a Polaroid photo I'd never seen before. It was taken from the passenger seat, pointed straight at me while I was driving. And in the reflection of the windshield, she was sitting in the sleeper, smiling. I swear I stopped breathing for a second. That Polaroid felt like poison in my hands, like it radiated something evil just from being there. I stared at it, heart slamming against my ribs, trying to make sense of what I was looking at. The photo wasn't blurry or old. It was clear. Too clear. I could see the stitching on my shirt, the faint scratch on the dash, the cracked vent knob. I keep meaning to fix. But none of that mattered. What mattered was her. Sitting in the sleeper, head tilted just slightly to the side, lips stretched in that same impossible grin, eyes still as black as tar pits. She looked pleased, like she belonged there, like she was always meant to be there. I shoved the photo into the glove box and slammed it shut, heart pounding so loud I couldn't hear anything else. I put the truck in gear and peeled out of that way station like a bat out of hell. I didn't care about logs, didn't care about speed limits. I just wanted to get away. But as I drove, I started to feel it again. That cold pressure in the cab, like the air had gotten thicker. My ears popped, my eyes watered, and then the smell came back. That sickly sweet funeral flower stench, stronger this time. It filled the cab like a gas leak, made me gag and roll down the windows, but it didn't go away. I cranked the air, stuck my head out like a dog, anything to keep from breathing it in, and then the radio, the busted CB, sparked to life again. Static first, then the same voice as before, whispery, dry. "She likes you," it said. "She likes how scared you are." I ripped the CB out of the dash, wires and all, and threw it into the passenger footwell. But the voice kept going. "You let her in. You saw her. You stopped. That's all it takes." My vision blurred with panic. I slapped myself across the face, shouted just to hear something human. But the voice only laughed, low and wet and cold. I had to get off the road. I spotted a roadside motel up ahead. the kind that looks like it hasn't seen a guest in years, and swerved into the gravel lot. I killed the engine, grabbed my keys and bag, and jumped out without even looking back at the cab. I didn't care. If I left it running, I just needed 4 walls and a door that locked. The motel clerk didn't say a word when I walked in, just handed me a key without looking up. Room 3. I got inside, slammed the door, and shoved a chair under the knob for good measure. I collapsed on the bed, soaked in sweat, lungs burning. I thought maybe I'd finally escaped her. Maybe I could get one night of peace. But around 2 in the morning, the motel phone rang. Old school landline, beige and dusty. I answered it with a shaking hand. The voice on the other end wasn't the clerk. It wasn't human. "I'm already inside," she whispered. And then, I heard breathing, right behind me. I didn't move at first. Couldn't. My whole body locked up like it had turned to concrete. That slow, raspy breathing filled the room, close enough that I could feel it brushing the back of my neck. I wanted to believe it was just my imagination, that maybe the phone call and the stress had pushed me too far. But I could feel the air shift behind me, like someone was standing there, watching, waiting. I gripped the motel phone tighter, using it like a lifeline, but it was dead now, just a soft buzz of static in my ear. No dial tone, no sound but her breath, and my heart hammering out of rhythm. Then I heard it. The floor creaked, just once, right behind me. I spun around fast, chair falling over, breath stuck in my throat. And there was nothing. No one. The room was empty, still. But the blanket on the bed was bunched up like someone had just gotten off it. And on the wall above the headboard, scratched into the peeling paint, were 3 long black marks. I stumbled back, nearly tripping over my bag. I grabbed it, keys already in hand, and I ran. I didn't stop to check out, didn't look at the front desk. I just sprinted across the gravel and launched myself into the cab like it was a lifeboat, and I was drowning. Slammed the door, locked it, started the engine and pulled out before the dust even settled, and as soon as the truck hit the highway, I looked in the rearview mirror. She was there. No reflection. Just her. Sitting in the sleeper again. Her grin wider now, like she knew something I didn't. Like this wasn't over. I screamed. I don't even remember doing it, but my throat hurt from it afterward. I swerved. Tried to shake her off, but the rig stayed straight, almost like she had control now. My hands were on the wheel, but I couldn't feel it anymore. The road stretched ahead, empty, endless, the way it always does when you're driving tired. But this wasn't exhaustion. This was something else. A pull, like the highway itself was bending, drawing me in. I drove for what felt like hours with her sitting back there, never moving, never blinking. And then, suddenly, I blacked out. Just like that. Gone. When I came to, the truck was parked. Truck was middle of nowhere. No lights, no sound. The road behind me was gone. Just desert. Dust and scrub brush. No signs, no traffic. My GPS was frozen, stuck on a screen that just said, "Return her." I didn't know what it meant. Still don't. But when I looked in the back again, she was gone. For the first time in days, the sleeper was empty. No hair, no breathing, no smile. But the Polaroid was on the floor now, a new one. Me in the cab, eyes closed, mouth open, like I was screaming. And behind me, a hand, long, pale, clawed, resting on my shoulder like she'd never left at all. I threw that Polaroid across the cab like it was on fire. It hit the passenger door and fluttered to the floor, face down. I didn't dare pick it up again. I just sat there, engine humming beneath me, my breath coming in short, choppy bursts. My hands were trembling so bad I could barely keep them on the wheel. But I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't alone in that truck. Even if she wasn't sitting in plain sight, I could feel her, like static under my skin, like cold fingers brushing the back of my neck every few seconds just to remind, Mishi was still there. I pulled out onto the highway, not knowing where I was or where I was headed, just driving. That's the only thing that made sense anymore. Just keep the wheels moving. Just keep the engine growling loud enough to drown out the whispering I swore I could hear coming from the sleeper. I didn't stop for gas, didn't stop for food, didn't stop to sleep. I passed exit after exit, rest stop after rest stop, but I couldn't make myself pull over. I knew if I stopped again she'd do more than just watch. Hours passed, or maybe days. I lost track of time. I was running on fumes, both in the tank and in my body. But the truck kept going, almost like it didn't need fuel anymore, like she was powering it with whatever twisted force was keeping her bound to me. The sun had long since vanished, the moon hanging low and fat like a spotlight. Just for us. And then I saw it. A sign, bent and rusted, half covered in dust. Sundown Hollow, 2 miles. I didn't recognize the name. It wasn't on any route I knew, wasn't on any map. But something about it pulled at me, like a hook in my gut. Like maybe, just maybe, this place had answers. I took the exit, tires crunching gravel as I rolled into the darkness. No lights, no people, just buildings. Old ones. Silent. Abandoned. The kind of place that feels like it's been waiting centuries for someone dumb enough to stumble in. I parked the rig in the middle of the main road and stepped out. My boots hit the cracked pavement and the air shifted immediately, heavier, colder, like the whole town exhaled around me. I walked up to what looked like an old church. The doors were wide open, hinges creaking in the breeze, and inside, candles, dozens of them, all lit. No one in sight. But written in soot above the altar were 4 words, "She rides with sinners." I turned to run, but standing in the doorway of my truck was the woman. Her face pale, eyes hollow, hair hanging like a veil soaked in shadows. She raised one hand and pointed directly at me. And her voice, clear and echoing, cut through the night. "Return me." Then the candles blew out all at once, and I was plunged into darkness. I froze there in that dead silence, heart slamming so hard in my chest I could feel it in my ears. The darkness felt alive, heavy, like it had a pulse. I backed out of the church, step by step, never taking my eyes off the truck. She was gone, from the doorway, vanished. But I knew better than to think she was truly gone. Something in that town, Sundown Hollow. It wasn't just abandoned, it was buried, forgotten for a reason. And I had stumbled right into the place she called home, or prison, or hell. I climbed back into the cab, locked the doors out of habit. Even though locks don't mean anything when it comes to her. My headlights flickered on by themselves. I hadn't touched the switch. The dash lights flared next, all gauges peaking, then dropping to 0 like the truck had flatlined. The engine didn't shut off, though. It growled low, steady, almost like it was waiting for her command. My GPS, dead for hours, suddenly lit up. The screen was black except for one line of green text. Drive. No destination, no map, just that one word. And when I hesitated, unsure if I was obeying her or dooming myself further, the passenger seat creaked like someone had just sat down. I turned slowly, stomach in knots. Empty. But the indent was there. Deep, fresh. I didn't argue. I shifted into gear and rolled out of Sundown Hollow, that eerie glow from the church shrinking behind me in the mirrors. As soon as we hit the highway again, the cab grew colder. Ice crystals formed at the edges of the windshield, the heater pumping but doing nothing. My breath fogged the glass. And then the whispering started. Not in English, not in any language. I recognized. Dozens of voices overlapping, some weeping, some laughing, some chanting. It came from the sleeper, from the floor, the ceiling, the vents, everywhere. I turned the radio on to drown them out, but it was already playing something. A man's voice, crackling like it was coming from an old vinyl record. You brought her back. You fed the road. Now the road will feed on you. I shut it off, clenched the wheel so tight my knuckles went white. Then the road ahead began to change. Slowly. Subtly. The lines faded. The asphalt turned gray, then pale. Trees on either side grew taller, thicker, more twisted. They leaned in, like the whole forest was closing in. And then I realized I hadn't seen another vehicle in over an hour. Not a single car. No headlights. No taillights. Just me and her and the road. That's when I saw the figure ahead. Standing right in the center of my lane. Dressed in black. Face hidden by long, dark hair. Same stance, same shape. I hit the brakes hard. The truck skidded. Tires screaming, but it didn't stop in time. I felt the impact. Heard it. Saw her body crumple under the bumper and vanish beneath me. I leapt out, heart in my throat, expecting blood, bones, anything. But the road was empty. Not a drop. Not a trace. Just that same whisper in the wind. You can't kill what's already dead. I stood there in the middle of that ghost-white road, wind howling through the trees like it was screaming for me to turn back, to leave, but there was nowhere to go. No cars, no towns, no exits. Just that endless stretch of highway that felt more like a noose than a path. I climbed back into the cab, hands shaking, and as soon as the door slammed shut behind me, the truck started on its own. Engine roaring to life like it had been waiting. I didn't touch the wheel, didn't touch the gas, but the truck started. To move. Slow at first, then faster. Like I wasn't driving anymore. Like I was just along for the ride. I pressed the brakes, nothing. Turned the ignition, nothing. I even pulled the emergency brake and the damn thing snapped off in my hand, like it had been rusted through for decades. I looked down and the floor beneath my boots. It wasn't metal anymore. It was wood. Rotting, splintered wood. I leaned forward, blinking in disbelief, and the dash, my familiar scuffed-up dash, was gone. In its place was a row of rusted levers and old brass gauges like something off a steam locomotive. And that smell, God, that awful smell, hit me again. Sweet rot, like a bouquet left on a grave for too long. I spun around to the sleeper and there she was, sitting cross-legged, grinning. Only now her eyes were missing. Just gaping black sockets, weeping a slow trickle of dark fluid that hissed when it hit the floor. She tilted her head and spoke without moving her mouth. "You're driving the hollow now." I blinked and the truck wasn't a truck anymore. It was moving, yes, but the road ahead wasn't made of asphalt. It was bone. Twisted, bleached bones all locked together like cobblestone. The sky above was pitch black, no stars, no moon, and the air felt thick, like I was breathing through water. I screamed. I don't remember forming the sound, but I felt it tear from my chest like I was being hollowed out. She just laughed, a sound that didn't belong in any human throat. I reached for the door, tried to open it, jump, anything, but when I pulled the handle, the door melted away in my hand like wax. I wasn't in control anymore. I wasn't even in the world anymore. I was in hers. Her voice came again, whispering through the vents, through the floorboards, through my own skull. 1 mile for every sin. 1 stop for every soul you pass. I didn't understand what it meant until I saw the first one, a figure on the side of the bone road. Pale, eyes empty, arm outstretched like it was hitchhiking, but its mouth was open, screaming. Even without sound, I knew it. A soul. A victim. Someone she'd claimed, and as we passed it, the truck shuddered like it had swallowed something. My head ached, my chest tightened, and the whispers grew louder. Another mile, another soul. I wasn't just driving anymore. I was delivering. I tried to fight it. Tried to wrestle the wheel, slam the clutch, scream at her to stop. But none of it mattered. The truck wasn't a truck anymore. not in any way I understood. It was alive, breathing, groaning, and it had chosen me to drive this endless road of the damned. With every mile, the world outside the windshield warped more. The trees lining the bone road twisted into human shapes, limbs jutting at impossible angles, heads bowed low like they were mourning their own fate. Their faces, if you could call them that, were locked in silent screams. Some reached out as I passed, their barkskin fingers scraping the side of the cab with a sound like nails on sheet metal. I clenched my jaw, white-knuckling the wheel, sweat pouring down my face. Every time I passed one of those frozen souls on the roadside, the truck shook and groaned like it had eaten something heavy. My ribs ached like something inside me was echoing that pain. Then I saw it, the next sign. Not a highway marker, not a mile indicator. Just 4 rusted words glowing faintly in red. No exit, no rest, ever. And below it, painted in dripping black, mile 66. That's when it hit me. I was being counted. Each mile wasn't just distance, it was a toll, a sentence, maybe even a curse. 1 mile for every sin, she'd said. But how many sins had I collected over a life on the road? How many nights had I ignored someone on the shoulder? How many times had I blown past a broken-down car because I didn't want to deal with it? How many stories had I heard over CB radio and shrugged off as nonsense? I thought back to the hitchhiker I'd ignored near the Nevada line, the one who looked soaked and frozen, and the woman bleeding from her nose outside that rest stop in Tennessee. Maybe they hadn't been hallucinations. Maybe this road was their revenge. The truck's mirrors twisted violently inward, no longer reflecting anything behind me, just showing flashes of those same faces I'd seen on the road. They weren't still anymore. Now they were moving, crawling, reaching, clawing at the edges of the mirror like they were trying to get in. I swiped my hand across one, trying to wipe it clean, but the glass rippled under my touch like water. I yanked my arm back. It wasn't glass anymore. It was something alive. She whispered again from the sleeper, closer this time. You fed the road. Now the road feeds you. My stomach churned. I looked down and saw my skin dimming, literally losing color, turning pale, almost translucent, veins darkening, fingers stiffening. I was becoming one of them. I screamed again, slammed both feet on the brakes, yanked the wheel to the side, and for one terrible second, everything stopped. The truck shuddered. Time warped. The bone road cracked open beneath me, revealing nothing but blackness below. The kind of black that eats sound, light, hope. I expected to fall, to crash. But instead, I was parked, back on asphalt, clean, quiet, middle of a bright sunny morning like nothing had ever happened. Birds chirping, wind rustling through green trees. The kind of peaceful morning you'd kill to wake up to. But I knew better, because the photo on my dash had changed again. It was me, sleeping in the cab, but behind me. She was smiling, hand over my heart, whispering into my ear. And in the corner of the photo, a number scrawled in red ink. Mile 67. I stared at that photo like it held the key to the entire nightmare, but my hands wouldn't stop shaking long enough for me to even pick it up. My skin was still clammy, cold, like the grave air from that bone road had followed me back into the real world, or whatever this was. I climbed out of the cab, boots hitting the asphalt with a solid thud, and the world around me looked normal. A rest stop lay up ahead, quiet and familiar. A soda machine humming under a rust-stained canopy. The kind of place I'd pulled into 1,000 times. But the second I walked toward it, I noticed something was off. The air smelled sweet, like blooming flowers, roses maybe. But underneath that was a bitter stench, like sulfur, like something rotting just beneath the surface. I walked up to the vending machine, heart still pounding in my ears, and caught my reflection in the glass. I damn near dropped to my knees. My face was paler than I'd ever seen it, with deep shadows under my eyes and something dark, almost, like a bruise creeping along my jawline. I leaned closer, and the machine whispered. Not through the speaker, not from behind it, from the reflection. My own mouth moved in the glass, even though mine stayed shut in real life. 70 more miles, then it takes you whole. I stumbled back and fell against a nearby picnic table, my mind reeling. That number, mile 67. Was it counting up? Counting down? I had no idea, but it sure as hell wasn't random. I looked around the rest stop, hoping, praying someone else was there. Another driver. A tourist. Anyone. But the only sound I could hear was that damn vending machine humming like it was alive. Then a sound came from inside my truck. The passenger side door creaked open by itself. I turned, breath stuck in my throat. And there, she was again, sitting in the seat like she belonged there. Head tilted, eyes back, dark and bottomless. But this time she didn't look angry. She looked hungry. "You stopped," she said softly, her voice like wind across a tombstone. "Now I must take something." I felt a sharp pain in my chest, like a heart attack, but deeper, more personal, like a hook yanked straight into my ribs and twisted. I dropped to my knees again, gasping, sweat pouring down my face. Then she was beside me, crouching low, whispering in my ear. "You can keep driving, or you can stay here, with them." I looked toward the tree line and saw them. Figures, dozens of them, maybe hundreds, all pale, silent, watching. Some looked human, others didn't. Twisted things, bent and broken in ways that defied explanation. All of them staring at me, waiting. I didn't say a word. I didn't argue. I just got back in that truck, turned the key, and sure enough the engine roared like a beast. The road ahead, not familiar anymore. The trees had changed. Taller. Hungrier. The sky, gray as ash. But I didn't look back. I drove, because now I knew the truth. I wasn't just running from a ghost. I was becoming one. Every mile I drove, I lost a little more, of my time, of my body, of my soul. And that number on the dash, still ticking. Mile 68. The road ahead stretched on, bleak and endless. And no matter how fast I drove, that number on the dash kept ticking up, like it wasn't measuring distance, but decay. Mile 69, then 70. My skin felt tighter every mile, like it didn't quite fit right anymore, like it was slowly shrinking on my bones. My fingernails had turned gray, almost translucent, and the veins in my arms pulsed with something darker than blood. I didn't know where I was anymore. There were no signs, no markers. Just this lifeless gray highway cutting through a dead forest that never ended. I hadn't heard a bird, a dog, or even my own stomach in hours. Days, maybe. Time didn't seem to work the same out here. But the worst part, I could feel her in the cab with me, even when I couldn't see her. Breathing behind me, sitting in the sleeper, humming softly, an old lullaby I didn't recognize, but every note made my teeth ache. The kind of song that felt like it belonged in a funeral home, not a nursery. And every now and then, I'd glance into the mirror, and I'd catch her eyes. Those deep, bottomless pits, staring back at me, not always in the seat, sometimes in the mirror itself, sometimes behind my own reflection. I tried talking to her once, just once. I figured if she wanted to drag me to hell, I'd at least know why. "What do you want?" I asked, my voice raw and cracked. She answered without moving her mouth. "You already gave it. I just came to collect." And then she vanished again, melting into the seat like smoke. That was the first time I noticed the whispers had changed. They weren't angry anymore. They were pleading, male, female, old, young, all of them whispering the same thing over and over. "Help us! Help us! Help us!" My CB radio, long dead, crackled to life and spat out static like it was choking on gravel. Then a voice cut through, barely audible. "Eastbound rig. You see her yet? You see the lady in black?" I grabbed the mic, desperate for any human connection. Yes, she's in my truck. How do I stop this?" The voice came back slow, quiet, almost afraid to say it. "You can't stop it, driver. You picked her up. You're hers now. Only way out is through." I asked what that meant. Silence. Then static. Then nothing. And just like that, the voice was gone. The CB dead again. The air in the cab grew thick, hard to breathe like it was turning into smoke. And then the trees on the side of the road parted, revealing a turnoff. A narrow, crumbling road with a sign half buried in mud. I couldn't read it fully. It was scratched out, bent in half, but what I could see chilled me to my core. "Welcome to Hollow's End." And below it, population. The number had been torn away. My headlights flickered. The steering wheel yanked to the right on its own, and no matter how hard I fought it, the truck turned. Toward that road. Toward Hollow's End. I didn't drive in. I was taken. The road swallowed me whole. And the dash? It ticked again. Mile 71. As soon as my front tires hit that broken, gravel-covered turnoff, it felt like the whole world tilted sideways. The trees grew closer together, like skeletal, arms reaching in to trap the truck, their branches scraping across the windshield like fingernails on glass. The temperature dropped fast, so fast that frost formed on the inside of the cab, creeping over the steering wheel like veins of ice. I tried to turn back, I really did, but the road behind me had vanished. Not just in the mirror, literally, gone. The truck wouldn't stop moving, like the engine was possessed by something older than fuel and steel. And then, through the fog, the town appeared, if you could even call it that. Hollow's End, a name that made my stomach twist every time I heard it in my head. The buildings were slumped and decaying, leaning in unnatural directions like they were melting. Street lamps flickered weakly, casting long shadows that moved against the direction of the light. A gas station stood on the corner, its sign barely hanging on by one rusted bolt. Full serve, souls only. I kept driving, slower now, trying to make sense of the place. Windows in the houses were broken but not shattered, from the inside, like something had escaped. And behind the cracked glass, I could see faces watching me, blank, pale, lifeless. I didn't stop. I couldn't. She was behind me again, whispering now in a tongue that felt more like a scream forced through water. I didn't understand the words, but I understood the meaning. We're here. This is the beginning of the end. The road through. Hollow's End wound tightly, narrower and darker with each block. That's when I saw it. The statue in the middle of what used to be the town square. 10 feet tall, twisted iron and stone, shaped like a woman in a flowing dress with no face. Just a mouth stretched wide open, too wide, like it was unhinged. And in her arms, she held a driver. A broken, limp body slumped in her grasp, keys dangling from one hand. My keys, my rig. I looked down at my dash, still ticking. Mile 72. I was watching my own death before it happened. The statue wasn't art. It was prophecy. And then the whispers in the cab stopped. Total silence. No hum of the engine. No wind. No heartbeat. She appeared again, this time in the passenger seat. Her face was clearer now. Familiar. She looked like someone I used to know, someone I might have passed on the road, maybe even someone I left behind. "You know me now," she said. I stared at her, heart pounding, and for the first time, I felt the weight of every mile. Every soul I didn't stop to help. Every call for aid I ignored. Every scared, cold, bloody soul left standing in the dark while I drove on. She didn't need to tell me her name. I already knew it. Consequences. She was the road's reckoning. And now she was mine. I opened my mouth to plead, to scream, to beg for a second chance, but all I could do was whisper back, voice cracked and hollow, "I see you." She nodded. "And now, you'll see them." Then the truck died. Lights off, engine cold. And outside, the townspeople began to move, hundreds of them, all silent, all staring, all walking toward the cab in perfect unison, each one pale. Each one familiar, people I'd left behind, their faces twisted in sorrow, rage, betrayal. I slammed the locks, turned the key. Nothing. The battery wasn't just dead, it was gone. The mirrors went black. My breath fogged the glass, and then the windshield cracked. Just once. A single line, like a warning shot. My hand reached for the handle, on its own. The door creaked open, my foot stepped down, and from deep within the shadows of Hollow's End, a bell rang. One toll, then another. One for every mile still ahead. Mile 73. I stepped out into the freezing silence of Hollow's End, gravel crunching beneath my boots like brittle bones, and with every footstep, the fog thickened, curling around my legs like it was alive. The townspeople, those pale, broken things, stood in a wide circle around the truck, their heads twitching with jerky, unnatural movements. No words, no breathing, just watching, all except one, a little boy. Couldn't have been more than 10, barefoot, wearing a torn red hoodie so soaked in. Dried blood, it was black. He stepped forward slowly, arms dangling like he didn't quite remember how to use them. His eyes locked on mine, and when he opened his mouth, a low, rattling voice came out. Not his. "You remember me, don't you, driver?" My legs locked, in place. I didn't want to remember, but I did. A snowstorm in Montana, a figure on the side of the road waving desperately. I had a deadline. I didn't stop. My eyes welled up. "I thought you'd make it," I whispered. There were others. "I thought—" "You didn't even slow down," the voice hissed from the boy's mouth. "Now you slowed down. Now you see." His face began to rot before my eyes, skin peeling like paper, bones showing through, eyes liquefying. I fell backward, into the truck door, heart hammering so hard it felt like it might explode. But that wasn't even the worst part. The other figures? They began to change too. All of them. Each face morphed into someone I'd seen over the years. People I'd ignored, left behind, forgotten. Hitchhikers I'd passed. Cars I didn't report. Crying faces in the dark I turned away from. All of them here. In this place. Because of me. The woman in black appeared once more, rising up from the fog itself, her dress stretching across the asphalt like tar. She floated above the crowd, arms raised, her mouth widening into that impossible void again. But this time, I heard everything, screams, thousands, all layered atop one another, all crying out from that empty mouth like a gateway to the damned. "You built this place," she said, her voice deeper now, echoing with rage and sorrow. "Mile by mile, soul by soul, brick by bone." My knees hit the ground. I felt every mistake crush me all at once. She reached down and touched my forehead with one ice-cold finger, and instantly, I was back in the cab, driving again, alone. The road stretched ahead, smooth and black, like the world had reset. I looked at the clock, 3:33 a.m., CB silent, mirrors clear, and the dashboard, ticking again, mile 74. I thought maybe I was free, maybe I'd escaped, but then I looked closer at the road signs, each one blank, and the highway itself shimmered, almost like a mirage. The humming came back, that low, cursed lullaby she always sang, and the radio, though dead, whispered a final warning. There are no exits from Hollow's End, only detours. So I drive. Every day, every night, through roads that don't exist on any map, haunted by the ones I failed. Watching the mile marker climb. And I know now, I'm not just a trucker anymore. I'm the next ghost. The next face someone else will see at mile 100 or 200 or 666. So if you're ever driving late at night and you see a rig parked on the side of the road, engine cold, lights off, and a pale man behind the wheel staring straight ahead, don't stop. Don't look in the mirrors. Don't listen to the whispers. Just keep driving, or you'll be the next passenger, because the road remembers, and it never lets go. Mile 75. And just when I thought the story had ended, that maybe mile 75 was as far as I'd go before fading into the asphalt like the rest of them, something changed. The sky, which had been an endless void of smoky gray, cracked open like a shattered mirror. Thin veins of red light bled through the clouds, casting long, twitching shadows across the highway. My hands weren't on the wheel anymore, but the truck kept moving, smooth and steady. The kind of calm that only comes right before a tornado, flattens everything you love. Then the dash blinked, just once, no numbers this time, just one word: confess. The word pulsed like a heartbeat, and with each flash, the air got heavier, my chest tighter. I grabbed the wheel, knuckles white, trying to slow down, to breathe, but the brakes didn't respond. I wasn't in control anymore. Not that I had been for a long time. The CB crackled. Faint static at first, then a voice, my own. Only it sounded older, worn down. Tell them what you did in the canyon. My mouth went dry. My stomach turned to stone. The canyon. I hadn't thought about that night in years. Not since I buried the evidence under 6 feet of desert and diesel fumes. I tried to shake it off. Tell myself it was just the road messing with my mind, but the headlights cut through the fog and lit up a shape in the road. A figure, standing perfectly still in the middle of the asphalt. I slammed the horn. Nothing. I flipped on the high beams, and then I saw her. Not the woman in black this time. This was someone else. A girl. Young. Teenager, maybe. Wearing a torn yellow hoodie with blood soaked into the sleeves. And her eyes. Those weren't human eyes. They were mirrors. Tiny, perfect mirrors that reflected me. Only not the man I was now. The man I was back then. The man who left her behind in that canyon with her arm crushed and her screams echoing off the rocks, begging for help. I didn't kill her, not directly, but I didn't help her either. I left her there to die while I hauled freight up the mountain, telling myself I'd get help at the next stop. But I never stopped. And now she stood there, in the middle of my path with her hands outstretched, lips mouthing the same word over and over. Confess. The truck didn't slow, didn't swerve. It plowed straight through her, and yet I felt the impact in my bones, like my soul had been torn in half. And just like that, I was in the canyon again. Not driving, standing, the desert cold against my skin. Her body lying twisted at the bottom of the rocks, eyes still open, still full of betrayal. And then the road rose up beneath me like a wave, swallowing me whole and dragging me back into the cab. The dash blinked again. Mile 76. The girl's hoodie was now hanging from my rearview mirror, slowly dripping blood onto the dash. I screamed, cursed, slammed my fists on the steering wheel until the horn gave out. But none of it mattered. Because this road, it's not just haunted, it's alive. It feeds on guilt, on silence, on the secrets drivers like me bury in the dark corners of our routes. And I was its favorite meal. I don't know how many more miles I've got left. I don't sleep. I don't eat. I just keep driving. With every turn of the wheel, another ghost joins me. Another face in the mirror. Another voice whispering through the vents. If you hear me on the radio, If you see me pulled over on the shoulder, don't stop. Don't wave. Don't even look. Because the moment you acknowledge me, you're part of the route. And once you're on it, there's no way off. Not until you've paid the toll. Mile 77. The road twisted like a serpent through some stretch of nowhere, a place I swear ain't even on this planet. Trees don't grow like that. They leaned in over the highway like they were whispering secrets to each other about the next soul they were going to take. The branches didn't sway with the wind. They ticked, like bones tapping together. The fog was so thick it felt like I was breathing milk. That cursed dashboard flickered again. Mile 78. But now, beside the number, there was a new message, burned into the screen like an afterimage from staring into headlights too long. Bring her back. I didn't need to ask who. That girl from the canyon. She'd become a part of me. I could feel her sometimes in the seat behind me, knees pressed up, head resting on her arms like she used to do on the side of the road, waiting. Every time I glanced at the rear view, I saw the shape of her hoodie, just the outline, but never her face. I don't think she wanted me to see how far gone she'd become. She didn't belong to the living or the dead anymore. She belonged to this highway. That night, the sky above me split wide open with a streak of green lightning that didn't make a sound, just a flash, and suddenly, the road ahead was gone. No pavement, no lines, just a dirt path, crooked and pulsing, like it was breathing. I couldn't stop the truck, couldn't even feel my feet on the pedals. The wheel turned on its own, pulling me onto that living trail. I don't know how long I drove. Could have been hours, could have been days. Time meant nothing here. I saw things out those windows no man should ever see. Children walking on the ceiling of abandoned gas stations. A deer with no eyes sprinting backward into the woods. An old woman sitting on a rocking chair in the middle of a burned-up bridge. Her mouth wide open and full of keys. All of them watched me. All of them knew me. Somewhere along that path the girl spoke again, not out loud, but in my head. "Do you want to fix it?" I couldn't answer. My throat was locked. But I thought, the word hard and loud. Yes. The truck stopped. Just stopped. Like it had been listening the whole time and finally heard what it wanted. The fog peeled back, and there it was. The canyon. Just like that night. Only worse. Blacker. Deeper. Hungrier. Rocks crumbled on the edges even though there was no wind. And I swear, I heard a heartbeat coming from down below. I stepped out, boots sinking into soft dirt that felt too warm, too wet. Something moved behind me. Chains dragging across steel. I turned. She stood there. The girl. The hoodie still. Stained, eyes still mirrors. But she was closer to real now, closer to here. She pointed down into the canyon. No words this time. Just that finger, trembling slightly, like she didn't want me to go but knew I had to. "Bring her back," she said, "or you don't get to leave." I didn't know how. I didn't know what bringing her back even meant. But my feet were already moving, over the edge, down into the dark. And the moment my boots left the road, the world turned upside down. I wasn't climbing into the canyon. I was falling into the past. I hit the ground with a thud that rattled my bones, and when I looked up, there she was. Still dying, still waiting, eyes full of tears and pain and that terrible hope. She didn't know she was already gone. I knelt beside her, hands shaking. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "I should have helped you. I should have stopped." Her lips moved. "Then do it now." I took her hand, cold, lighter than a feather. And suddenly, the wind rushed in, all around us, screaming, spinning. The canyon collapsed in reverse, rebuilding itself with fire and noise. The light returned. And just like that, I was back in the truck, alone, breathing hard. The dashboard screen blinked once more. Mile 79. But this time, the hoodie was gone from the mirror. Her seat was empty, and the silence wasn't heavy. It was peaceful. Like maybe, just maybe, I'd saved one soul. Just one. But the road wasn't done with me. Not by a long shot. Because when I reached for my coffee cup, there was something sitting underneath it. A Polaroid. Old, faded. Of me, standing by the truck. And a different girl. One I didn't recognize. On the back, scrawled in red ink, was a question that made my blood run cold. What about me? Mile 80. I held that photo in my shaking hands, staring into the face of a girl I didn't recognize. But something about her eyes, those hollow, wide, pleading eyes, stirred something deep in my chest. Like a memory buried in asphalt and exhaust fumes. The road beneath the truck rumbled, as if it could feel what I was holding. I set the photo on the dashboard, but the ink on the back smeared and moved on its own, the words twisting like worms, in dirt, until they formed a new message. Look behind you. My spine turned to ice. I didn't want to look. Hell, every instinct screamed don't. But I did. I turned slowly toward the bunk behind my seat, and sure enough, someone was sitting. There, still, silent, the girl from the photo. Same white dress. Same tangled hair. Same broken eyes. She didn't move. Didn't blink. She just stared at me. A dried tear trail ran down her cheek like she'd been crying for years. I opened my mouth to speak, but before a word could leave, she whispered, "You left me in the fire!" And suddenly the world around me burned. Flames exploded from the windows. The walls of the cab bubbled and blackened. I screamed, hands flying to the wheel, but it had melted into the dash. She kept whispering, voice dry and cracked. "You said you'd be back, but you never came." The fire faded, like it had never been there, and the world snapped back to cold silence. I was sweating, panting. The girl was gone again. But in her place, on the seat, was a charred bracelet. Pink, beaded. The kind a kid makes for their best friend. I picked it up carefully, and as soon as I touched it, I remembered. The rest stop. The fire. The screaming. I'd been hauling chemicals, stopped for a quick nap. I'd heard the explosion, saw the flames consume the small building nearby. I could have tried to help, could have kicked in the door, maybe saved someone, but I stayed in the cab, told myself it was too dangerous, called 911, watched from a distance, never spoke of it again. But she had been inside, and now she was. With me. The bracelet crumbled in my hand like burnt leaves. The dash lit up. Mile 81. The lights on the highway flickered one by one, like falling dominoes ahead of me. The world beyond the beams of my headlights was pure darkness. Not night, not fog. Nothing. And in that nothing, something whispered my name. Not from the radio, not from outside, from inside my mind. "You owe more than one soul, driver. Keep going." I pressed the gas. I didn't want to. My foot just moved on its own. The engine growled and the road stretched endlessly into the black. Signs on the roadside began to appear again, but now they bore names, names I didn't recognize, names that somehow felt familiar. Emma Wills, Tyrese Calderon, Rena Marks. One after another, and each one brought a fresh memory crashing down. Accidents I didn't report, people I almost helped, near misses I kept driving past. The road was keeping score. The steering wheel pulsed like a heartbeat. The windows fogged up, and when I wiped one clear, I saw my own reflection. Aged, pale, hollow-eyed. A man drained by guilt, by memories, by ghosts. And yet, I kept driving. Because I had no other choice. Because the moment I stopped, I knew they'd all catch up to me. The girl in the fire, the boy in the snow, the hitchhiker who vanished when I didn't stop. All waiting. All riding with me now. Sometimes I catch glimpses in the mirrors, faces pressed to the glass, hands reaching toward me, mouths moving with silent screams. But when I turn to look, they're gone. Only their scent remains. Smoke, blood, salt, and that damn perfume the woman in black always wore, floral and rotten at the same time. The CB crackled again. Static turned to whispers, and then a voice I hadn't heard in years came through. "You can still fix it." My brother's voice, dead for 20 years. "Or you can burn with the rest." I don't know what lies ahead on this road, but I know one thing for damn sure. I'm not driving toward redemption. I'm driving toward reckoning. Mile 82.